Welcome to Auto News Talk. I am so glad you could join us because, honestly, we have to talk about how deeply weird the automotive world is right now.
Oh, it is. It's a completely fractured landscape.
Right. I mean, on one hand, you have automakers trying to build these ultra-futuristic, spaceship-like electric vehicles.
And pouring just billions into digital tech.
Exactly. But then, on the exact same lot, they are cashing in on massive, roaring V8 engines and these incredibly nostalgic retro cars, all while navigating, a completely chaotic global economy.
It really is a massive contradictory balancing act. They're trying to keep one foot in the past and one in the future.
So our mission for you on Auto News Talk is to basically map out this terrain. We're going to dig into what people are actually buying, look at the behind-the-scenes scramble for computer chips, and see how global power dynamics are completely rewriting the cars you can even buy at your local dealership.
Yeah, because the car in your driveway is, well, it's not just a car anymore. It's a physical manifestation of a much larger global story.
Right. So let's start with the economic gravity of it all. Because looking through the latest Cox Automotive sales report, I really have to ask, are car buyers playing with monopoly money?
It definitely looks like that from the outside.
I mean, the broader economic indicators look pretty rough. That exact same Cox report points out a cooling labor market with unemployment at 4.2%. Plus, housing is sluggish. But somehow, auto sales are accelerating.
Yeah.
Explain that to me, because on a human level, it makes absolutely zero sense.
Well, it defies broader economic gravity until you break open the numbers. So in the latest data, the seasonally adjusted annual rate, the SAR, hit 16.5 million vehicles.
Wait, hang on. Before we get lost in the jargon, what exactly is a seasonally adjusted annual rate?
Ah, right. Fair question.
That's
So
the jerk.
car sales fluctuate a lot, right? People buy differently in the winter versus a huge summer clearance event. The SAR just smooths out those seasonal spikes so we can see the real underlying trend.
Okay.
So a rate of 16.5 million, which is up 4.4%, looks like a booming market. But the Cox data points out a massive catch.
Which is?
Fleet sales are doing the heavy lifting here. It's not everyday consumers propping this up. Fleet sales are up 10% overall. And rental fleets specifically, up 12%.
Oh, wow. So when you see a headline that says auto sales are climbing, it's really just rental car companies restocking their airport lots.
Precisely. It completely masks the reality of the individual consumer. But there is a distinct group of everyday buyers still at the dealership.
Let me guess, people who aren't worried about inflation.
Exactly. The report identifies this as the wealth effect. The stock market is keeping high-income buyers feeling very comfortable. They're the ones walking in and buying those high-margin luxury vehicles.
Well, the average person is probably just trying to keep their old car running for another 100,000 miles.
Basically, yeah. But for the average buyers who do have to buy a new car, they are flocking to hybrids. The Cox report notes that hybrids now make up 18% of new vehicle sales.
Really? 18%?
Yeah, that's a jump of 3.5 percentage points.
Okay, but I mean, if it's 18%, that still means over 80% of people aren't buying them. Why is a 3.5% jump a big deal?
Because in the auto industry, a 3.5% swing is an absolute earthquake. I mean, these companies plan their supply chains years in advance. When nearly 1 in 5 buyers suddenly demands a hybrid, it completely upends factory planning.
That makes sense.
It's all about hedging against high gas prices. Buyers want the safety of a gas engine and the efficiency of a battery. But what this data doesn't answer is how long this momentum can last if real disposable income stays stagnant for average households.
Right, because eventually the rental fleets finish restocking, and the wealth effect only protects high-income buyers for so long.
Exactly. And that underlying fear is what's driving a brutal reality check in the EV space.
Which feels like buying a smartphone now, honestly. It seems like automakers are trying to be Best Buy and a heavy manufacturing plant at the exact same time.
That is a very accurate way to look at it. If you look at an ongoing industry headlines update, the pricing and production pressure on EVs is massive right now.
Yeah, the hype around luxury EVs seems to have totally cooled off.
Completely. I mean, the updates point out Lucid is cutting production and doing layoffs. Maserati is slashing prices on the Gran Turismo Folgore just to move units. The luxury EV market is struggling.
So they're all pivoting to the bottom of the market.
They have to. Legacy automakers and startups are teasing affordable options just to survive. We're seeing reports of Ford planning a $30,000 EV truck.
30 grand for a truck?
Right. And there's a startup called Slate that's aiming for a $25,000 electric truck.
Wow. That's incredibly cheap.
It is. But to build a dirt-cheap rolling computer, you have to directly secure the tech supply chain. You can't just buy parts off a shelf.
Which brings us to that really interesting report regarding Ford and Micron. Ford apparently signed a long-term automotive memory supply agreement with them. But why memory? I mean, my old gas car has a computer in it, and it didn't need a direct contract with a microchip giant.
Because your old gas car used very simple microcontrollers. Just basic logic gate saying, roll the window down or fire the spark plug.
Right.
An EV is entirely different. It requires enterprise-grade memory to constantly manage battery thermal loads, process real-time radar data, and handle massive software updates.
Like downloading a whole new operating system while the car is parked in your garage.
Exactly. But here is the most fascinating thing about that Ford and Micron report. It explicitly lacks any verifiable details on the financial scope, the timing, or even the affected models.
Wait, really? So it's basically just a press release saying we did a thing, but giving zero details.
Pretty much. And that proves just how tightly guarded these tech partnerships are. It's almost treated like state secrets at this point.
Because cars are tech products now.
Exactly. And that tech reality makes them vulnerable to things that traditional cars never had to worry about. Software regulations are literally changing what cars you can buy.
Yeah, this blew my mind. There was a detail in a recent Car and Driver Hub that pointed out Polestar is exiting the U.S. market completely.
Right.
And it's not because their cars are bad or too expensive, but specifically due to connected car rules. How does that even work?
Well, regulators look at a modern EV with all its cameras, microphones, and GPS tracking, and they realize it's basically a surveillance device on wheels.
That's a terrifying way to frame it, but yeah.
If the software running all that hardware is tied to foreign servers, it becomes a national security issue. So regulations are popping up to block that. For a brand like Polestar, the cost of rewriting their entire software stack to comply is just too high. So they just have to pack up and leave.
That is wild. You have legacy automakers promising these dirt-cheap $25,000 EVs while desperately trying to secure memory chips and navigate international software bans.
Right.
And what these updates don't explain is how legacy automakers will financially sustain this dual development path of EVs and traditional cars long-term.
It's an incredibly expensive problem. And while those legacy brands are completely bogged down fighting over microchips and $30,000 prototypes, new global players are just quietly moving in and taking over the driveway.
So let's talk about that global reshuffle, because Chinese automakers are making huge moves, aren't they?
Massive moves. We're looking at some UK new car registrations data, and it shows Chinese automakers have completely moved past the novelty phase. They are securing serious, quantifiable market share in traditional Western markets.
Lay out the numbers for us, because the scale here is really surprising.
Okay, so the overall UK market grew by 11.4%, which is solid. But the Chinese brands vastly outpaced that. JUL bumped its share up to 2.99%. BYD hit 3.32%, and Omoda grabbed 1.65%.
Now, to someone outside the auto industry, grabbing 2 or 3% of a market might sound tiny, but that's actually huge, right?
It is monumental. Breaking into a legacy market and stealing even 1% of brand loyalty is incredibly difficult. And the most memorable detail from this data is MG.
The British brand that's now Chinese-owned.
Exactly. They had a massive month. They sold 10,395 cars in the UK.
Wow. Over 10,000 in a month.
Yeah, capturing a 4.28% market share. That means they are no longer just a cheap alternative.
People are actually seeking them out.
Right. Omoda and JUL's UK managing director, Victor Zhang, attributes this directly to growing customer confidence and just having a very strong product range. They are winning on actual quality.
But again, this brings us right back to the geopolitical tension we saw with Polestar.
Exactly, because what these UK sales figures don't answer is how shifting geopolitics will alter this trajectory.
Right, because looking back at another update from that Car and Driver feed, there was a highlight about former President Trump's refusal to renew the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, the USMCA.
Yes, and that is a perfect example of how trade policy could instantly rewrite global auto sales overnight. A tariff or a revoked trade agreement can essentially ban a car from your local lot, no matter how much customer confidence it has.
So if you're a legacy automaker, you're stuck. EVs are wildly expensive to build, the software is causing international security bans, and foreign competitors are building great cars for cheaper.
Yep, it's a squeeze.
With all this talk of memory chips and market shares, what happened to the sheer joy of driving? Is this just the last giant roar of the gas engine before the electric silence takes over?
Honestly, that roar is exactly how legacy brands are surviving. To fund the extremely expensive EV future, they are leaning so heavily into high-margin nostalgia, massive V8s, and pure enthusiast bait.
I love that. The Car and Driver Hub makes it so clear that the industry is deeply split.
It's totally split. They are relying on high-output combustion vehicles to balance out the clinical, tech-heavy nature of EVs. BMW confirmed its fifth-generation X5 is keeping V8 power.
Nice.
GMC is adding V8 power to the 2027 Sierra, and they're playing the heritage card hard. We've got the return of the Honda Element as a hybrid, and Jeep reviving the Cherokee Trailhawk.
And the performance space is just beautifully absurd right now.
Oh, completely.
You have the 2027 Chevrolet Corvette Stingray hitting 200 miles per hour. Ferrari released the 12-cylindry, and they specifically brought back the gated shifter.
Right, which is just brilliant.
It's the most tactile, emotional, mechanical thing you can put in a car in an era where everything else is a touchscreen.
Because emotion still sells. I mean, look at the auction market. That same Car and Driver feed noted a Snoopy Edition 2000 Mitsubishi Pajero Mini going up for auction.
A Snoopy Edition. I mean, that is incredibly niche.
It is wildly niche. But people love the charm of it. Automakers are using the immense profits from traditional gas-powered nostalgia and these huge performance cars to foot the bill for their EV research and development.
That is such a fascinating paradox. They have to sell V8s to afford to invent the EVs that will eventually replace the V8s.
Precisely. But because this is just a feed of industry updates, what it doesn't analyze is the underlying cultural friction. Will car culture ultimately embrace the software-defined future, or actively rebel against it?
That is the ultimate question. So let's pull all these threads together for everyone listening. When you look at all these sources, I see three really distinct things emerging.
Okay, let's lay them out.
First, we have the hybrid bridge. Consumers are adopting new tech, but very cautiously. We saw that supported by the Cox sales data with that massive jump in hybrid.
Right, they want to hedge.
Exactly. Second is the silicon reality. Cars are tech products now. They are deeply vulnerable to supply chains and software laws, which we saw with the Ford and Micron deal, and obviously Polestar's U.S. exit.
Absolutely. The hardware is just a vessel for the software now.
And the third theme is the global shift. The hierarchy of automakers is just being rewritten in real time by new international players. The UK-Chinese automaker data proves they are winning on quality, not just price.
And yet, there are some really glaring tensions in all of this.
Right, the contradictions are wild. You have the push for dirt-cheap EVs, like Ford's $30,000 truck and Slate's $25,000 model, directly contrasting with the booming, highly profitable sales of high-end V8s and 200-mile-per-hour Corvettes.
It's two entirely different philosophies living under the same corporate roofs. And the other tension is purely economic. We have a remarkably resilient auto market, fueled almost entirely by the wealth effect in fleet sales and the Cox data, running headfirst into a cooling labor market and stagnant housing for the average buyer, also found in that same Cox data.
It's a market built on a very fragile foundation. So the practical so what for you, the buyer, is that the car market isn't transitioning in a straight line. It's splitting into very distinct lanes based on your income, your geography, and quite frankly, whether you want a rolling computer or a roaring V8.
We are watching an industry try to keep one foot in the past and one in the future, while the ground shifts entirely underneath them.
It's incredible to watch, and it leaves us with one final provocative thought. If software and tech regulations are already forcing brands like Polestar out of markets, when does the software inside your car become more geopolitically important than the badge on the hood? Keep an eye on your dashboard. It might tell you more about global trade than you think.
Very true.
Thank you so much for joining us for this segment of Auto News Talk.